Hey there, my name is Byron Isaacs. I'm a musician. I travel with the Lumineers in their touring band. I have multiple sclerosis.
Now, multiple sclerosis is a structural problem, right?
You should get the reward out of this. Take a look where you are.
Wow. Man, I can't think the last time I could stretch out that far.
Yeah, and here, this is the really big change.
We all live inside a body, and every body comes with challenges.
Hi there. This is David Weintraub, the owner at Bodyworks DW. We are a medical massage therapy practice with 2 locations in New York City. This is one of my best and oldest friends, Byron Isaacs, who is the bass player for the Lumineers, among many other amazing things that you're up to. And we are starting a podcast series that I want to call The Challenge of Being You, which is based on the premise that we all have this human body that has, for most of us, 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, 2 ears, and yet we're all trying to do very different things with them, and we all still have to deal with the fact that we're trying to do all of our amazing things through this vehicle of the human body, which has challenges, and I want to talk a little bit about them since that's my field of expertise. And my goal with this series is to bring in clients doing really cool things and then talk about how that interaction between what you're up to and the human body sometimes gets in the way, what kind of challenges you're facing, what kind of solutions we can come up with. We're also going to I'm going to do body work on Byron, and we're going to try to do a series of sessions and see what we can do in terms of getting him some better results for using this vehicle, and then, talk about what's possible, what might not be, and get into it. So that's kind of what we're up to here. I'm going to hand the mic over to Byron for a second and let him introduce himself and talk a little bit, and then we'll just pass back and forth and talk before we get into the body work.
Hey there, my name is Byron Isaacs, as David already said. I'm a musician. I travel with the Lumineers in their touring band and play, pretty large stages and have to cross the stage. I have multiple sclerosis, and for a long time I was sort of at a nice plateau that wasn't changing much, but lately I've started declining slowly, and it's becoming harder for me to walk across the stage. My left leg is getting weaker and acting funkier, but almost more concerningly, my left arm and hand have started to get bad, and I'm getting weakness and a loss of fine motor control, and that's really concerning and frightening, and has been affecting my playing. Luckily, not to the point to where other people are noticing yet, but it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of struggle to get the notes down and to play. To get the music across it takes a tremendous amount of energy. I'm wrung out at the end of a show. Actually, I'm wrung out after a couple of songs, and luckily the way the set is paced, there will be long intros where I can sort of recover a bit. There are a couple of songs I don't play on, so I'm able to maintain, but I'm just lucky really right now that the set that I'm doing with these guys has those breaks. If I were playing a more intense show, I'd be struggling more even than I am. So anyway, what I'm hoping to do, what I'd like to be able to do, is reduce some of the spasticity that I have, hopefully regain some of the fine motor control that I feel like I'm losing, which really seems to be a matter of excess tone in opposing muscles. So the opposing muscles are fighting the action that muscles are trying to do. And that's the same with my leg as well. Anyway, hopefully it's more of a priority for me to be able to keep playing better and to keep from having to retire young, which I never ever planned to retire. But this is the scary part. but also, you know, I'd like to be able to walk better. So that'd be great. Number one priority is this. Number two priority is this. So anyway, that's where I am.
All right, so a couple big notes to start with, just so that we get really clear, right? I practice medical massage therapy, which has certain things that it can really accomplish and certain other things that it probably can't, right? And so the first thing that I want to do when I'm assessing a client is determine how much of the symptoms are what I would call structural problems versus functional problems, and I'll define those. So structural problem means that some system is damaged in a way that is certainly not fixable through massage therapy, and potentially not fixable at all, depending on the situation, right? Now, multiple sclerosis is a structural problem, right? It is an underlying thing that I can't do anything about, right? Like I can't magically, I'm not a magician, like I'm a scientist, and I can't magically make the multiple sclerosis go away. So that's the base structural issue, right? And then there are second stage structural issues that it causes. So if you don't know, multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disorder. We're going to be talking a lot about autoimmunity because I'm also a sufferer. I don't have MS, I have something called psoriatic arthritis. Both of these issues, psoriatic arthritis, multiple sclerosis, the structural problem is our body attacks our own systems in different ways. So psoriatic arthritis, my joints get attacked and all my joint tissues get attacked. Sucks. For Byron, his nerves get attacked, right? And so that's going to cause even a second stage of structural problems, because when the nerves get damaged, that is going to cause the muscles to misfire. That in and of itself may start to cause tension problems that start to grind down all the other joints as well, right? So let's define functional, right? Functional is, so we can use computers as a metaphor. Computers have hardware and software, right? You need the hardware to run the software, but the hardware doesn't work without the software. The software is what tells the hardware what to do. Our bodies have a similar paradigm in that we have hardware, which is like bones, tendons, ligaments, muscles, blood vessels, organs, you name it. And then we have the brain, which is is also a piece of hardware, but it runs the software. And the software is basically, and I want you to really, as a person watching this, as a potential client watching this, as somebody who might know me watching this, I want you to really get your head wrapped around how complex the body is, right? When I talk about software firing hardware, when we're just talking about the musculoskeletal system, which is the thing that I'm most, if I dare say, an expert on, maybe I'll go there. But you're talking about hundreds of thousands to millions of muscle fibers controlled by tens of thousands of nerves that all need to fire in sequence to do what he does, to play music, right? Like that is a very complex set of things going on, right? And like any piece of software that you've used in your life, there are possibilities for bugs and errors, right? Now, in the perfect world, no MS, no problems, you might be able to run the software cleanly without a lot of hiccups, right? The MS introduces a lot of bugs in the hardware that then the software glitches out trying to figure out how to work around, right? And that's a basic overview of functional versus structural, right? So now the structural side, I can't really do that. I can't fix that. What I can do is hopefully undo and some of the what I would even call third stage problems. So you've got the MS up here, which then fires and damages nerves, which then causes muscle misfirings, which then causes pain in joints, mismovement, and that is a cascade atrophy, and that is a cascading spiral downwards, right? So my goal, working with you or with anybody who would come in, especially if there's a structural problem, is can I slow that curve and flatten it out and maybe lift you up out of it for a while and then get you through the next 50 years a little bit better off, right? Like, and presumably better off, much better off immediately, and then slow the decline as much as possible, right? Like, that's really what I could potentially do, and I don't want to make false promises, but I've worked with maybe 6,000 to 8,000 clients. I lost track maybe 10 years ago. I have no idea. And one thing I will say in this idea of the challenge of being you is that I have worked with professional athletes and, you know, Marvel superheroes on film that I won't name for obvious reasons because I have a confidentiality agreement with all my clients. I've worked with people who run charities and whose parents got them a gift certificate while they're taking finals in college and are penniless. And I've worked with, I think, at least 1 or 2 billionaires and everybody in between. And what I will say is, at least in the small subset of humans that I know and have worked with, y'all complain about exactly the same stuff. I don't care how much money you make, what you do in your life, we're all complaining about the same set of problems, which is we still have to deal with this human body no matter what, right? And that doesn't mean that that's the only problems that people complain about, but I swear the billionaires to everybody else are all still complaining about their rotator cuff or their low back or their neck pain or their feet or their knees, right? That's just the thing. That's partly why I wanted to make this podcast, because that is the challenge of being you, right? That you want to do really cool things out in the world, and yet you still have to deal with this hardware-software combination, right? So with Byron specifically, right? Like, he's dealing with some really, as he says, concerning third stage impacts from his disorder. I hate the word disease, but whatever. You call it what you want, but MS is a genetic thing. Psoriatic arthritis is a genetic thing. There's not, we're not at fault. We didn't eat sugar too badly or something. We're just stuck with the bad genetic lottery on one side, and obviously we've won the lottery in other ways. Byron's a genius musician, and he's also quite modest. So in some ways we won the lottery, in some ways we didn't, and that's just life, right? Byron and I, by the way, we've known each other for what, almost 25 years for sure, maybe even closer to 30.
25, yeah.
Long before I became a massage therapist, we were playing in rock bands in the city. Byron, in some ways, this whole entire practice of bodyworks might not exist without Byron, because for 2 weeks when I was poor and penniless after massage school and trying to get back into the city, I lived on Byron's couch. So, so there you go. And in the midst of that experience, Byron also got me re-addicted to espresso. So go figure. Anyway, so.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, yeah. All right, so let's get, back into you, obviously, because you're the one here, and sort of so we've heard a lot about how this is impacting your playing, your motor control. I personally find it's always interesting to me to talk about the internal versus external experience of being a human, right? Like what you know versus what people see. And in your case, that is amplified kind of exponentially to millions, tens of millions people watch you play on stage, not knowing what you're going through when it's happening, right? Like, you've got a job to do, which is to be a rock star, quite frankly, and that's literally his job. And if you look at him in photos, he definitely plays the part, right? And he kills. He's an amazing musician. He rocks. And we hope to keep you doing that for a lot longer than, And I would say that I'm not going to say that I'm going to magically be the one to solve all that, but hopefully as part of a team of people get you on the right path, right? So let's do this. Let me hear a little bit more about kind of the symptoms that you're directly dealing with, which I know some of, but they don't know them. So why don't we,
Right. All right, so symptom-wise, for some reason, this is not typical of multiple sclerosis. The way that it, that the lesions happen, it's not typical of multiple sclerosis because the way lesions usually happen, you'll get symptoms asymmetrically, and they won't be unilateral in any direction. But for whatever reason, luck of the draw, it seems to be really hitting my whole left side. So it started with my leg, and then out of the blue, a couple of years ago, I started to feel it in my arm and hand, and it's I could envision myself as a musician, an elder statesman, sitting in a wheelchair, still playing the bass, still rocking out, maybe not looking like a rock star anymore, but still able to play and to contribute, and But when this started to happen, suddenly I'm faced with this thought of a retirement that I never emotionally planned for. My feeling was, as a musician, the only thing that's going to make you retire is if they nail the coffin shut. And they better nail it shut because you're still going to try to make the gig the next day after you're dead. So, never had a plan to retire ever. Like, who does that? Like, why would you? I managed to win the lottery and being able to do what I love and am passionate about as my career, and to actually have some success at it. It was fantastic. Everything was going great. So then life, came around the corner with a 2x4 and whacked me, and like now I'm struggling with this. It's scary. And then, on top of that, there's also the vanity issues. I'm now that it's very hard for me to exercise like I used to. I haven't figured out, and my energy is down, really down. And so I'm gaining weight. I'm putting on weight. I can't fit into my good show clothes anymore. I'm having to buy bigger and bigger clothes. I look dumpy. Luckily right now, dad bod is accepted, kind of. But, it's not ideal. I don't feel like I look like a rock star anymore. I don't like to look at myself in mirrors. I'm like, that's affecting me. I worked for so many years to be a virtuoso on my instrument. So just having only being able to just execute, barely parts that I, came up with, months ago or years ago, that was never the thing. I was working on excellence, and now virtuosity's gone. So there's all this emotional baggage that's coming up all the time. It's like, it's tough, and it affects my mentality, my mood, which then also brings my energy level even farther down. So the psychological aspect of it has its own spiral that's going down, that's affecting the physical. Yeah. So there's that as well, and I'm self-conscious on stage sometimes if I let myself. I'm getting more disciplined at getting myself out of the equation and remembering I'm not up here for me. I'm up here for all of you. And that's the only way that I can get through these shows, because otherwise, if I don't get my head out of myself, then all I'm thinking is, here I am, a dumpy, limping, aging has-been who can barely play, and that's a terrible headspace. It's an interesting antidote to perhaps my, I may have been arrogant in the past. Maybe this is like some karmic retribution that I'm being, is being visited upon me. I don't know, but I'm trying to think of anything about the symptoms that I haven't covered. Mainly weakness, differential in I'll have, for instance, my hamstring on my left side is very weak. My quadriceps not so much. So what you have is then the smooth swinging of the leg is nearly impossible because you have one doing work and the other one not. So there's no compensational stuff happening there. Also, this is interesting. When I wake up in the morning and yawn, my entire left side also yawns and will seize with the yawn. It's like, and that'll last basically as long as I am still feeling like the need to yawn. My whole side goes. If I try to, the arm and the leg are so connected. If I try to do like standing against the wall and just lifting my calf up to exercise my hamstring a bit, my whole arm will start to twitch and seize up. Also, when I'm out walking, the classic MS thing that you'll see with people, my left arm will just start to rise up like this, and I'm walking with my arm up, and I say, go back down, and then it'll come back up, So it's all this strange, interconnected, you really get the feeling of the whole, what would you call it? Like this lattice work of interconnected nervous system. It's like a net or something, and no action of one muscle seems to actually be as separate from the others as I once thought. You can't really isolate exercises, really. Like, I never thought that. I can do everything still apparently isolated on my right side, but on my left side, the interconnectedness is so obvious and quite annoying.
All right, I'm fascinated by the yawn part of it, and I have some thoughts and ideas that but that sounds very related to your diaphragm. And the diaphragm, everybody, most people know that the diaphragm is your breathing muscle, sits in here. Everybody kind of forgets it's actually one of the biggest muscles in your body. And your musculature all fascially connects and all feeds into itself. And so if your diaphragm is, and separateness to connectedness, right? Like what you're describing is that you're no longer able to separate functions from other functions, right? Which is very common, right? Like this is what I deal with all day long with most people, let alone with you, right? You're just noticing it in a much more pervasive quality on the whole side. And so a large part of my work, everybody thinks that I rub muscles, right? Like that's what I was doing 18 years ago. Now what I think my job is to reteach the brain how to run the software, and the vehicle through which I do that is the muscles and the skin. But really, I had a client ask me last year, so when you release my muscles, what happens? And I said, nothing. Nothing at all happens. You're going to walk out of here in 5 minutes and they are going to pop right back to where they were when you came in. All I did, and so what's the point of doing this for 90 minutes or 60 minutes, right? Well, it's that during that time, your brain gets to experience what it's like to not have that pattern. And then it goes, well, that's cool. I like that better. How do I get more of that? And it starts to recalibrate. And it starts neuroplasticity, exactly right? Like, and so my job is to reteach your brain. And sometimes that means literal, it's literally like turning the computer off and back on again. Like I literally hit the reset button and your brain goes, oh shit, there's a lot of bug in this code. Let me try and fix some of that, Excuse my French. Anyway, all right. Enough talk. Let's get you, we're going to move these chairs out of the way, get you stood up, and we'll do some postural analysis, and then we'll get you on the table and all that, and so on and so forth.
All right, so I'm going to take off my orthotic here. So this is an AFO. It's a ankle-foot orthotic, and it is designed to help with drop foot, because one thing that happens with MS frequently, and with other types of neurological issues, is your muscles in your shin here don't hold up your foot anymore, and it just sort of flops down, which makes walking very difficult. So they developed these. This is a newfangled one that actually gives you some play. They used to be very rigid and stiff, and those are still useful for some things. But for more athletic applications, you can actually still engage your calf muscles when you're wearing these, which is helpful for me because the issue is not so much the calf as it is the shin.
Before we get Byron on the table, I do this with every client that I work with. What I want to do is point out what I see in his posture, what it means to me, and then what it might mean to him as well, right? And so I'm going to go through my whole process here. Now, just keep in mind, if I'm working with you as a brand new client, I might really make this a lot quicker and shorter and do it in my own head and not explain quite everything. But I think it can be valuable to the client to even know what I'm seeing and what it means, right? So the first thing I look at is the foot position. Ideally, we want hip socket, knee, and ankle on a vertical plumb line in gravity. And what I would say about Byron's stance is it's definitely wide. Your feet are also slightly externally rotated, which doesn't actually happen at the ankle because the ankle is not capable of that. So that's either at your knee or your hip or both, right? And I can absolutely see that both of your arches are super collapsed, and so there's some flat feet going on with that as well. So that's the first thing I see, right? And if you were somebody complaining about low back pain, for instance, yes, I'm absolutely going to work on your low back, but I'm going to want to have a session where I really work on this because that's going to have the ability to not just have the back feel better, but then have it hold longer term, right? And so when I talk about aligning, like that would be one thing I see is just trying to bring the feet to a more neutral position because that's going to make the system have less work to do to hold you up in gravity, right? Now the good news is that you're pretty symmetrical from one side to the other, which is actually different than the last time I worked on Byron, which is good, right? I will say that this knee is a little bit more, and I'm gonna sort of funhouse mirror go a little bit extra compared to what I see with you. This is not what you look like, but this knee is a little bit more forward and the other knee is a little bit more locked, right? And so we would want to kind of try to balance that out a little bit. The other thing I can absolutely see is this left arm does kind of come up a little bit like that. So there's some bicep activity that we want to lighten up a little bit. The other thing that really sticks out to me, and I'm going to come back in camera to point it out, is this head position is absolutely shifted towards the right, significantly. And for some people, that's a head tilt or a head rotation. For you, that's a literal shift sideways. I'm going to guess that has a lot to do with your bass playing, which makes some sense, right? Like yeah, exactly. You can see the instrument in the posture a little bit, which one of these days I'm going to write a book on what I like to call occupational patterning, right? Because when you do something for thousands and tens of thousands of hours, it really does lock into the posture in ways that y'all might not see, but I see kind of clear as day, right? So that head position, pulling it over, is partly something that if we can actually undo this side of your neck, this is going to feel a lot better, right? Which is very counterintuitive. All your symptoms are here. This is actually tighter, and if I can undo that, that's going to put less strain over there. Both arms are internally rotated, you know. Ideally, we would rest with our arms, palms facing towards us. Most humans in modern day with phones and computers and desks don't do that at all. I certainly don't. But with you, it's pretty noticeable. So we want to work on opening up that rotation. All right, so that's front view, left, right. Let's have you turn to face that wall and side view, and I'll talk a little bit about what I see here. Because this is basically a version of what I call the most common human posture that there is, right? And so here, what we want to see is the ear, shoulder, middle of the spine, technically the body of T1,
the hip socket, the knee, and the ankle all lined up on a vertical plumb line. That would be the ideal. Most of us, hardly any of us, actually have that anymore. And you are exhibiting what most of us have from sitting in chairs and desks half of our lives, which is a version of an anterior pelvic tilt, what I would call a posterior rib cage tilt, where I'm talking about the top of the rib cage being further back than the bottom. And then that really requires the head to come forward on top of that, right? Now, we can absolutely see this knee more bent than the other one, right, in this position. So that thing that I pointed out in the front is definitely there. Before I go into correcting a few things, let me have you turn the other way. Yeah. And so here, this is a more aligned set of joints, right? And that is partly, not entirely, why this side feels better than the other side, right? Here, we've got ear, shoulder, first joint, hip. Knee is a little in front, ankle is definitely behind the line, but the rest of it's more aligned than the other side, for sure. And just to see it, let's have you turn towards the blue wall. I don't always look at the back view on the body, but this can show us a few things here. You can definitely see the sense of the knees really falling forward, and this being crunchy and tight here, and that tension piling up there. So let's do a couple corrections, because I just want you to see on camera that, like, aligning things in gravity will already start to correct a few symptoms way before we even get him on the table. So let's have you turn back this way, actually. Okay, so I'm going to do a correction to try to get this anterior tilt a little bit easier. So what I'm going to have you do, I'm going to touch a few places on your body, and I will usually ask if that's okay. All right, cool. So I'm going to ask you to think about this, not pulling straight back. I want you to think about that pulling up to here. Good. And breathe into this space back here. And think about holding this and breathing into the top of your sternum. Good. Let this fall forward. It's going to feel wrong. It's going to feel like you're in a monkey position, but you're actually going to look straight, right? So now we've got a much cleaner line. Of course, this knee still wants to drive forward. We'll deal with that on the table, but you can already see some improvements in his posture. Some of his complaint about feeling dumpy actually disappears with this, right? Because some of that's postural, right? And it probably feels really weird and like you're doing this, right? Yeah. Everybody says this. It feels like they're doing this. However, you definitely look straighter, and you'll see this when we watch the video later, right? You also now, if you can think about that, have this opportunity for the breath to go into here, which will help this shoulder a little bit more, although it may actually flare up some symptoms for feeling the muscles actually have to feel things. That's possible. Now, I'm gonna try something. I want you to take your feet from this position and bring them closer together, much more than you think, even 2 more inches. Even more. Great. Now, the left foot is a little bit externally rotated. Bring that in a touch more, just to the toes. Leave the heel. There you go. Okay. That's going to feel wrong. But with that, can you think about this connection to there again? Good. And the only thing I want you to do with this knee is just think about, yeah, there we go. Don't have to hold it hard, but a little bit of that activity. And see if that helps you feel like this is more supported. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah. That also starts to get these to lift a little bit, and we'll work more on those on the table. for sure, because if I can give his arches more of a sense of ability to collapse and spring back, that's the shock absorption that you need for everything else, right? So that's a little bit of what I'm seeing and what I'm going to work on. I'm definitely going to try to open up the back of his knee here to hopefully give this more support. I'm going to work a lot on opening back here, here, and there. So that's basically the game I'm playing. You know, this is not going to go away from one 90-minute session, but we can start the process of trying to reorganize this stuff. Then we can give him some homework that hopefully can support that, and then so on and so forth. So how does that sound? Cool. All right. Thank you. We're going to get him on the table. So we have Byron. We're starting face down today. We certainly don't always start face down. There's plenty of sessions I do face up just the whole time. But I want to do a little work right in this area on him. And I want to get into the calf a little bit, which face down is easier. As I say to everybody, if I gave you a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being I want to throw you out the window and 1 being barely touching you, the sweet spot for good long-term therapy is somewhere between a 5 and a 7. So I may check in with you on that from time to time and see how I'm doing. And what's interesting to me is that standing, you looked more symmetrical than you do lying down. Lying down, I can see a lot more of the bass playing posture showing up. There's a little bit of a pelvic tilt here, and then you can really see how this knee is more forward than that, and there's like some asymmetries that way that we're going to try to even out. But honestly, overall, I've seen you more asymmetrical than today, which would be nice if that correlated to lesser symptoms, but it doesn't always, and in your case doesn't seem to be. And we're doing 90-minute sessions with Byron because he's got a tight timeline where we can maybe get in 3 or 4 of them until he goes back on tour. But for most clients, what I would say is 90 minutes for a first session is not a bad idea because it does give me more time to assess and plan. But that ultimately 60 minutes more often is better than 90 minutes less often. And I definitely can get a lot done in 60-minute sessions. Sometimes I like to joke that the 60-minute session feels like I pulled you apart and you've got to go home and put yourself back together, whereas in the 90 minutes I can spend the last 15 minutes putting you back together so that you feel a little bit more integrated. But for clients that are trying to decide between 60 or 90, whether it's time or budget reasons, I would say that 60 minutes more often is definitely more impactful than 90 minutes less often. My goal with a series is that I want to see somebody 2 weeks or less between, with the idea being that I'm going to actually confuse your brain today, and I need to get back into it while your brain is still confused. If we let you reset to normal before we work on you again, then we sort of have to start over from scratch. It's not entirely black or white that way. I can still do a lot if I have to see somebody every 3 to 4 weeks, but it's just not as impactful. 3 to 5 sessions with 1 to 2 weeks apart will have way more impact, and then maybe you don't see me for a year versus seeing me once a month for 6 times even. I would get more, you would get more out of 3 sessions 3 weeks apart and then never seeing me again than you would 6 sessions 1 month apart, in general. Yeah, your rotator cuff, unsurprisingly, is unhappy.
What's is surprising is you're noticing that, but I'm not experiencing pain or
Pain isn't always where it's tight.
Right.
Oftentimes the tight thing isn't the problem, it's the thing that's overstretched or weak because the tight thing is doing all the work.
Right.
A lot of times the thing that's, for instance, we noticed standing that this was tighter, pulling your head away, and that's overstretching all this tissue. And the overstretched tissue is often the stuff that yells at you all day. guessing that got up into a 7/8.
Yeah.
So that is part of your rotator cuff. That's a muscle called supraspinatus.
Superfecta.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious asshole. There's that great meme on the internet of this image of the back of the body as an anatomy poster with these big red dots on it that are labeled like anatomy posters, and they just have these little call outs that's like jerk, asshole, idiot, dumbass muscle. You know, it's a very funny meme.
I can relate.
So for the LMTs watching this, I'm looking at how does the shoulder girdle move and the shoulder joint, and I can move the girdle a fair amount, but the joint is very restricted here. This doesn't want to move independently in the shoulder joint, and trying to raise him up here isn't working so well. So I would love to hang this off the table, but that's going to be hard. But if I can get this shoulder joint, and just to, for the non-LMTs, if you don't, or the LMTs that don't remember from school, the girdle is the placement of the shoulder blade and the collarbone on the rib cage, and the shoulder joint is the humerus in the shoulder blade socket. And what I can see is that your shoulder girdle moves pretty well, your shoulder joint not so much, which we kind of knew, but now we get to confirm it in actual reality. What I'd like you to try to do, Byron, is to stretch your fingers lightly towards the floor and see if you can open your elbow too. And I want you to make very small little circles on the floor with your arm from here. Yes, good. Even smaller. Good. Now, I talked earlier in the interview about the fact that, like, my job is to rewire his brain, so I could have him just lie here passively and feel muscles release, but if I can get him moving, even though he doesn't necessarily know what's happening, I know his cerebellum, which is the part of your brain that controls movement, is essentially trying to figure out how to do this differently and more efficiently as I'm working on it, because I'm literally taking away some of the ways that he's compensating for not having this move properly by restricting this movement down here. So before we were actively making him work, this time I'm just passively moving the bone while working on the muscle. And for the LMTs watching this, you can think of this as sort of level 1, 2, 3. Level 1 is just work on the muscle. Level 2 is passively move the bone that the muscle's supposed to be moving for the client. And then level 3 is have the client move the bone themselves and engage the muscle. Sometimes after giving somebody the really active hard work I just did with the last set of things, it's good to switch and make things a little easier on them. But now we've got certainly the shoulder girdle moving, the shoulder blade is able to move around on there, and just out of curiosity, if I block it in place, do I have the ability to open the shoulder joint a little bit more than I did before? Yeah, not bad. So just to see if I can increase that. Ideally, what I would want is to be able to have the flat top of the blade parallel or perpendicular to the table, and move this bone, the humerus, also in line with that. That would be the ideal. So to try to help that out, what I want you to do, Byron, is to press this elbow straight down towards your hip. Good. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let go. Hey, there we go. That opened up a little bit more. This is a style of stretching called PNF. Go ahead and one more time. Press. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let go. Nice. One more time. Last time. Go ahead and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. And you were saying that felt like something.
It felt like he was getting to the extent of
the range of mobility.
Yeah.
of the joint.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense was that like end range?
Right at the edge of bearability.
Cool. And that's my hidden secret. I'm known for just walking right up to that line and just trying to see how much of a session we can sit there. I don't always do a lot of forearm work. For most clients, if you get the shoulder and neck moving better, the arm takes care of itself to some degree, or it might not be the first thing I do, but this is a major part of his existence, is using this forearm, so I am going to do a little bit of work today on it. For the LMTs watching this, I hope you notice that it doesn't actually take all that much work in any one area to cause a change, and that if you get lost in it and spend the whole hour on just one area, in some ways that's actually not productive and can just make it feel dead and beaten up. I do like to spend a lot more time in this area than most therapists. If you remember when we looked at the side view, I talked about this being like a hinge joint, even though it's really not technically like that. But these muscles in here, these ribs should be available to expand and collapse with the breath. But oftentimes, these muscles get over-recruited for holding you up. Or in Byron's case, for hiding his anger at the world. No. That's not true. It is true. It's not true. I think if I were to try to understand your anger, I would say this. Byron has spent tens of thousands to potentially hundreds of thousands, I don't even know what math is on your time, mastering a craft, only to have this disease potentially start taking some of that away from you. And that would piss me off too.
Yeah.
For those of you who worry about having your glutes worked on, I invite you to think about the fact that your glutes are one of the largest muscles in your body. And if you think that you can get away with feeling better but avoiding having any work on it, well, you can't really. I mean, your hip socket is also one of the biggest joints you have, and the most vulnerable and mobile ones too. I mean, if I were to, maybe we'll do this like in post-production, but if you really look at how the hip socket, the femur is held into the hip socket, there's a lot going on there, and it requires a lot of different intricate musculature. So if I can't work in here because somebody is too worried about the fact that I'm working on your glutes, well, probably can't solve your low back pain for sure, and maybe not anything. And so when I'm doing this kind of rocking here, I'm assessing what is the wave motion of the lumbar spine. Does it wave? Does it not wave? It's definitely more wavy than it was when we started, so that's progress, right? And again, if you get into perfectionism and you want to keep working on it, you will get more movement, but then you will lose the ability to work on other things. So time management is an art form of how much impact can I have in the right places at the right time in the most efficient way? Something I'm constantly working on. And that was the warm-up on that muscle. That isn't even the real, I'll come back to that later. Sit in the corner and think what you've done, adductor digiti minimi. You'll find this fun, actually. The name of that muscle in Latin is adductor digiti minimi, which I always think of Austin Powers about. Yeah, the little adductor that does your digits, which are your toes. And for those of you who, anatomy is still all Latin. It's probably the only use of Latin left in the world for the most part. And all of the muscle names are really kind of dumb. They're basically just this muscle here. Some of them are creative. There's a big muscle in your calf called soleus that's called soleus because it's shaped like a fish. And soul is fish in Latin. But that's one of the few creative ones. Most of them are basically like the muscle that lives here that does this. All right, now we're back to this bad boy. So this, I'm just going to warn you, is going to suck. So this is back to adductor digiti minimi. I once had a therapist my first year in the field tell me that this was the secret to low back pain, and I was really skeptical. And then 10 years later, I was like, oh, no, he was right. This is part of the puzzle. So what I want you to do, Byron, is curl your toes and let them go.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That sucks.
Yep. This will feel like I'm scraping a scalpel along the bottom of your foot, and I am sorry, but I need to do it. Curl your toes, let go. One thing I am going to do to help lift this arch is work on the tibialis posterior, which lives right on the deepest layer of the bone, right on the tibia. I'm just going to do this. If I was doing the lower leg session, we'd be spending a lot more time in here. But today, I'm just going to say hello to it. And Byron's probably like, that's not hello. That's like fuck off and die. All right. You made it through one side. Let's have you slide down towards your feet and turn over onto your back so your head's on the table, not on the face cradle. Sometimes we think our job is to get everything to relax, right? But that actually is hard to do sometimes because your brain doesn't know what that is. It's forgotten what that is. And sometimes the way to get it to relax is to make it tighten first and go very far in the other direction, right? And so sometimes when I'm teaching, a lot of therapists worry about, oh, but that's so intense. Like, is the client, going to be able to relax? And it's like, well, after, yeah. Right? Like, but if we draw the contrast between what it feels like when you're really tense and really fighting something, then your brain gets to go, oh, right, I don't like that at all. Let me do the exact opposite of that. If you've ever done those like tests on BuzzFeed where you're supposed to see like the differences between like 3 gradients of like orange that are like, barely different from each other, that's very hard. But looking at the difference between orange and green, that's pretty easy.
Right.
And so if you want somebody to like change in a certain direction, sometimes you draw the opposite of that. All right, this is also going to suck. I am sorry. That is the peroneus longus tendon, which can sometimes get stuck to the calcaneus a little bit and not glide like it's supposed to. What I'm doing is barely anything, and it feels like a 9.9. All right, we're starting to get some movement there. It's still pretty, okay. It's a project for another day. One thing I am noticing is there's a ton of edema, i.e. swelling around here.
Yeah.
We've definitely calmed that down somewhat already today, but there's, lying down with your feet up on a chair at the end of the night, especially after a long show or anything, is going to help that.
Okay.
It's going to help a lot of things.
Okay.
I think one of my favorite Byronisms is watching him play Madison Square Garden with the Lumineers and hauling his upright bass through the crowd to this weird little acoustic stage they set up in the center of the crowd, basically because it's like, well, I'm not letting anybody else touch my $10,000 upright bass, so I will just take it through the crowd. and then taking it home on the subway afterwards.
Yeah. That was my favorite part of all. What's great too is the bass player, like, and also New York is cool, but like nobody recognizes the bass player.
Yeah,
So
right.
I have to say, it felt amazing to like play Madison Square Garden and then take the train home like everybody else. Great. Maybe almost beaten by playing Barclays Center and walking home.
Oh, yeah.
Among all the crowd of people leaving and not being recognized, but that was awesome. I love that.
A true artiste, just in it for the music, not the fame.
Oh man, I'm so glad not to be recognized anywhere.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I've started weirdly with our tiny little YouTube channel to have the once or twice a year person be like, "Oh, I know you." I'm like, "Oh God." Oh, almost forgot something there. I do want to stretch out this hamstring.
All right. My hamstrings are so shitty.
So what I'm doing for the watchers is I want to see at which point in this gentle lift his knee wants to start bending and protecting. And so far, it's actually better than I thought. So I've got it high enough now I can place it on my shoulder, and I can give a little calf stretch on top of that. I can make the knee just gentle. Now what I want you to do here is keep your hip on the table, and I want you to think about firing your glute in the top of your hamstring and slicing off my left arm with your heel. Nope, don't point here.
Okay.
Just fire here. Good. Fire more. I want to feel pressure here. There it is. Good. Don't lift this hip. There. Good. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, there we go. Not bad. That says to me that that's more about the nerves not feeling comfortable opening than the muscle, because we just added about 15 degrees of range of motion there. All right, again, keep the hip down. Yeah, nice. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice. There we go. And again. Good. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Where do you feel that the most? The back of the knee or up near the hip? Or both? Yeah, top of the hip. Okay. That's probably the long head of biceps femoris more than the short head, or that might even be the glute itself. You all right?
Uh-huh.
You
I
want to
also
go?
feel it pull all the way through the side of my lower leg too,
Yeah.
into my foot.
Yep. That's what I want. All right. You want to do one more?
Try.
Go for it. Don't point. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. You should get the reward out of this. Take a look where you are.
Wow. Man, I can't think the last time I could stretch out that far.
I got a thing that you can get on Amazon that will help with this. That's like $8.
Really?
Yeah. Well, maybe 20. But all right, let's go for it one more time. That's it. Nice. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good job. Breathe. Time for a few more things, just to integrate this with the shoulder. I just had an idea, Harry, that we've never ever tried before, which is both views at the same time.
Plus what?
Both views at the same time, top down and front view, and yeah. Good. Nice. Now the good news, I think, Byron, is the last time I worked on you, your system was so stressed that you reacted to the session almost like your next few days were just kind of hell. I don't think we're gonna get that kind of reaction this time around. I think maybe your brain finally remembers me for doing good. Yeah, and that's where we have some real issues, right? This is your rotator cuff. You should, on a perfectly healthy person, this should be parallel with the table.
Really?
Yeah, I can't get there, but I'm a lot closer than this. I can probably only get to about here, like, myself, but this is very restricted, so.
What happens? Because I'm not feeling any pain.
No.
What happens when you push against it? Like,
Well, we'll find out in a second. First, I want to work on serratus anterior, so I want you to just let that drop.
oh man.
This might be worse, sorry. You know what? Give me a nice grrr. Good. For the LMTs and clients watching this, notice I pushed the system really hard there. I can't just keep pushing. I gotta give them a little bit of a break. Just like the camera, the battery's been overheating and we have to give it a little time. I have to give him a little time now. At least you're not crazy like Liszt.
List?
Yeah.
Fucked his hands up.
Yeah. Sorry for the inside joke for musicians, but, well, not joke, but Liszt decided that he could play piano faster and better if he cut the tendons in his fingers, which did not produce the effect of him being able to play better and actually ruined his career. I mean, he was a composer, so it didn't, he was still able to write, but.
Rachmaninoff tried to increase his range with his hands by sticking wedges between his fingers. So his fingers would spread farther. And also wrecked his career.
Yeah. Not all of us can be Alan Holdsworth.
Right.
Alan Holdsworth is a guitar player who can, his reach is stupid long. It's insane, but it's because he's genetically just 6'8" or something. I don't even know how tall he is, but his finger, he's probably got Marfan syndrome for all I know, because his fingers are just so long. And for the people watching, when I finish, I don't immediately try to make it go anywhere. I just let it rest for a second or a few seconds, and it will gently start to fall on its own, usually. There. All right, you know what? I will take that. Take a quick look at where your arm is.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's a real surprise.
That's talking
amazing.
to the brain versus just thinking about the muscles, right? Like we talk to your brain throughout that. So I will take that. All right. I think I got to give you a few minutes of reward time after all of that.
Okay.
So we're just going to do a little bit of neck work.
Okay.
Slowly turn your head towards the right. And come back. And slowly turn towards the left. This is going to be a little bit more interesting on this side.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I said I was giving you a reward, but here I am being mean to you again. Honestly, I'm starting to think that we need to get a PT involved for this left shoulder with you, if that's at all possible.
Yeah.
A good one. I don't know, does the Lumineers travel with anybody like that or no?
No.
That might be worth arguing for. For everybody in the band, not just you.
Yeah.
All right. Breathe into your collarbones and your armpits, nice and easy. You're done with all the mean stuff. Okay. You made it. I want to point out a few differences from the first time that I can remember. One is his stance is not quite as wide and not quite as externally rotated. And I'm starting to see the beginnings of a little bit, especially on the right side, of an arch, which is awesome. This looks to me more open and easy. The head's still sitting off to the right a little bit, but not that much, and I didn't really do much for that this time around, so that's like later stage stuff. But the big thing, to me, the huge thing, is this knee, right? That knee was really bent before, and now is almost better than the right side in terms of its ability to open backwards.
Wow.
And that is where you're going to get the support all the way up into that shoulder so that the shoulder feels like it's got something underneath it and supporting it, right? And so just notice the feeling of that knee, just to kind of check in with it and see, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's have you turn sideways. And let's see if we got a little bit better. Yeah, okay, so this is still behind the line, but not nearly as much, right? The knee is a little bit easier. So there's a definite feeling of a plumb line here. We could still give you homework to think about this going up into here a little bit, just as a, and thinking of the tailbone tucking a little. There we go. And maybe even that lifts your arches to do it. Yeah, there you go. Nice. That you're pressing your feet into the floor a little bit. Now, we really have a nicer plumb line, and the head position looks fantastic. Right, his eyes are really right on the horizon, and this is far more open. Turn on the other side, because that was the left side that was more noticeably, yeah, and here, this is the really big change, right? That was super bent when we started, and that is like even straighter than the right knee. And you should feel like that's got more, it's got more of your back, so to speak.
Well, you know what I've noticed most of all is less tension in my neck.
Yeah. Yeah, and we barely touched his neck, honestly. Like, I did not do a whole neck sequence at all. That's just from building all the foundation underneath it so that it has better support and ease underneath it, which gets into that idea of that efficiency of stacking the bones, lightens up the muscles, right?
My arm is hanging.
Yeah, definitely.
It was like this before.
Yeah, and you know, there's more to do there for sure, but the placement of this shoulder, you should feel like when you move that around, it's
so much better.
Yeah.
I mean it hurts. I'm getting a little bit of pain
Yeah.
here.
Well,
from the
there's still
injury.
definitely some restriction in the shoulder joint, like but it's definitely on the way, you know, and then this is also why we want a series, right? This is a great place to get to, but it's not there yet, right? Now, if he goes off on tour after this, he'll feel better, but then in a few days to a few weeks to a month maximum, you're going to be right back where you started. So that's why we follow up, because then I can start to actually take this and keep moving it, and then the curve, instead of this gentle, we start to get this more exponential growth. Growth is the wrong word, but exponential change, right? It starts compounding on itself throughout the series so that by the session 5, the dramatic change is way different than session 1, right? And so the cool thing about the next few weeks is we're going to be able to get in at least 2 or 3 more of these, and we'll get to see the change from standing before session 1 to standing after session 3 or 4. And I would, we're going to do some post-editing to show you those differences, and I'm going to make a bet that they're going to be pretty dramatic, which is all to say nothing if your symptoms don't lighten up, but hopefully even right now they're feeling different and better,
For sure.
Cool. Homework, right? Okay. We need homework, right? Okay. It's one thing to feel the change, it's another thing to actually then bake it into the system, right? Yeah, this is great. So this pulled in a lot, this opened up more, right? Your head's stacked, your shoulders are easier, and you're finding that posture without having to think about it as much. Yeah. So that psoas muscle that was like scraping your soul when I touched it, we need that to start relaxing more. And the best way to do that is not to try and stretch it, not to try and strengthen it. That'll just piss it off more. We just need to teach it to relax. And the way that we're going to do that is a softer version of legs up the wall. Legs up the wall in yoga shortens the psoas, but then you still have to hold your legs up.
Right.
So legs on a chair in 90 degrees bent, which I'll show right now, is something you can do, especially when you're on tour and you're just sitting around in your hotel room. I give this to almost every client as the first piece of homework.
Okay.
You're basically going to just lie down with your feet up on a chair or the side of the bed or a couch, preferably those, something that's not going to allow you to fall off of it like this does.
Right.
A chair with arms is perfect. And what you're doing is you're taking that psoas muscle, which when I'm just lying down or standing is stretched and tight at the same time, and it hates both of those things, so it's just unhappy.
Right.
I'm shortening it, but taking it out of gravity and not asking it to do anything. Now, that won't in and of itself solve the problem because it still needs a good 3 to 5 minutes to trust that you're not going to jump into activity, and it needs to be primed for activity. So you got to give it at least 5 to 8 minutes like this. No phones, you can put music in, relax, you can talk to somebody, but just don't do any of this kind of stuff. And just that's going to give that muscle enough time to be like, oh, he is actually nice to me. He does love me. I don't have to support him all the time. Let me relax. And it will actually relax. And you'll start to feel it go and start to spasm a little bit and then and relax. But it does take usually 5 to 8 minutes. And it might not even happen the first night. It might take a few days to a couple weeks of doing this to get that effect of finally the brain goes, oh, I can let that go, right? And then when you get that, your brain goes, aha, I don't have to hold that all the time, right? And that's gold. So this is by far the first homework I give. It's certainly going to help the hamstring a little bit because, again, it's going to shorten that but not ask it to do anything at all. So it also gets to relax. I'm going to give you one add-on, which is to just try and let your arms hang out this way too. That's going to give that left shoulder a little space to just kind of ease and stretch after a show. And if you really want to, you could even get some little light dumbbells or just books or something and place them on your palms, right? Only if that feels okay. If that still feels hard and stretchy, then don't go that far. You could put them on pillows up here if that's the case. But just something like this would be great for the arm as well. And I think that's homework, just learn to bake in actual time, especially after a show, where you just stop asking your body to do anything at all. And that's not sleeping, right? Sleeping is different. This is just like not doing anything.
Right.
And then you go to sleep and you'll sleep better too. So can you do that?
Yes.
Awesome. Deal. All right. Byron and I are both starving now, as is Harry. So we're going to go get some food, talk some more about what the next thing is, but we're going to make a series out of this and record each of them, and you'll get to see the progress that he makes, and it's going to be awesome. All right. I've been thinking about your shoulder, and I do think that there is actual bursitis in the joint. 2, 1. And I have an idea, and it's definitely going to target that for sure.